Okay, we are going to be doing the map. This map will be on your next quiz, which will be next Tuesday. I mean, next Wednesday. It will be your Tuesday night's homework. We don't have school on Monday. We come back on Tuesday, and that will be the homework to study for the history quiz. So this is the map that will be on that quiz. So make sure you know your Midwest region.
North Dakota, South Dakota.
No, we're not going to do that. We're just going to say them, okay, guys?
North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan.
All right, slow down, but don't drag them out.
North Dakota, South Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, South Dakota.
One more time in order.
North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan.
And if you could not do that by yourself, then you need to be studying it. It would be in the back of your book in the 400s. Find the Midwest region and study it. All right, let's start on page 214 and read about Louisa May Alcott. How many of you have ever heard the term tomboy? Do you know what it means?
No, but I heard of it.
All right, so who knows what it means? Who's heard of it and you know what it means? Tomboy, like they say right there, such a tomboy. All right, a tomboy is just a word that's used to refer to a girl who likes to do things that a boy does. So she's not your typical girl who wants to play with dolls. She likes to run and play baseball and do all the things like a boy. So that's a tomboy. So Louisa May Alcott was a tomboy. She was in a family of all sisters, but she was the one that liked to do things like a boy. All right? Louisa May Alcott, such a tomboy. Townspeople smiled as the 6-year-old girl whizzed past them, rolling her hoop around the Boston Common. Such a tomboy that little Louisa May Alcott is, remarked the well-dressed ladies to each other. Those comments did not bother the happy little girl who loved to be outside. All right, we're going to also find out, even though she loved to be outside and she loved to run, she also loved to read. Can you do those two things at the same time?
No.
You can be outside and read, but you can't be running and read, can you? The Alcott family. Louisa's family lived most of their lives in Massachusetts. Isn't that where John Greenleaf Whittier lived too? Massachusetts? They both lived, so that's something else they have in common. Besides both being authors, they both were from Massachusetts. Bronson and Abba Alcott had 4 daughters of whom they were very proud. Anna, Louisa, Beth, and Abba May. The girl's mother, Abba Alcott, was a very kind person. She always had time to sit and listen to all of her daughters. She was also very wise. Each daughter listened to her advice and deeply loved her. Bronson Alcott, their father, was a teacher. He had new ideas for teaching children. Most families did not agree with his new ideas. Often, there were not enough students in his school to keep it open. Without a job, it was very hard to provide for his family. Hungry, but happy. Everybody needs to be following along as I read. Shouldn't be looking at me. Look at your book. The Alcotts were indeed a very poor family, but being poor did not stop them from being happy. Part of their secret for being happy was the way they chose to help others. So helping others was their secret to happiness. You will need to know that. For breakfast, they could usually afford only milk and bread. One day, their mother heard of a poor family that lived down the street who had no breakfast at all. Daughters, would you be willing to give your breakfast to a family who has no food? They were hungry themselves, but they cheerfully took their breakfast to the poorer family. The Alcott family returned home, hungry but happy. God provides. Winters in Massachusetts are cold and snowy. One winter night, Mrs. Alcott watched the fireplace. There was only a little firewood left. What would they do when the wood was gone? Fireplaces were the only way of heating homes at that time, and fireplaces needed wood. Just then, someone knocked at the door. When the door was open, there stood a man who had no firewood for his home. "I have sick people in my home who need the warmth of a fire. May I use some of your firewood?" he asked. Mrs. Alcott knew her family needed the warmth of a fire too, but Mr. Alcott did not hesitate. He gave the poor family their firewood. Later that same night, there was another knock on the door. One of their neighbors had an extra load of firewood. He wondered if the Alcotts could use it. "You see," Mr. Alcott told his family, "God knew what we needed and he supplied it." Louisa had keen eyes and a tender heart. She knew how worried her mother always was over being so poor. "My poor parents, they always worry about having enough money to take care of us," thought Louisa. "Someday I'm going to earn money to pay all their bills. Then I will take care of them." Turn the page. Louisa loved to write and began to think about selling her stories to publishers. A publisher is somebody who can print your stories to sell them, like to a magazine or even a book form. How happy Louisa was, and how proud of her family was of her when one of her stories was published in a magazine when she was only 16 years old. So that would be the age of somebody in high school. Connor is 17, so like a junior in high school. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was just the first of many short stories and books she had published. Louisa loved her parents all the more for the willing way they helped others. Louisa wanted to help people too. At that time, many slaves were gaining their freedom by escaping north to Canada. The Alcott family was a stop on the Underground Railroad. So that means they were conductors, right? The people who helped the people on the Underground Railroad were called conductors. Where slaves traveling north could safely find rest, food, and comfort. During the Civil War, Louisa May Alcott decided to work as a nurse in a Union hospital. She traveled to Washington, D.C. to help care for wounded soldiers. She was one of many brave women who left their homes to change bandages, feed patients, and read or write letters for the recovering soldiers. But after only 6 weeks, she became very ill and had to go back home to rest and get well. A book about girls. The years passed. By now, Miss Alcott had written dozens of stories which both girls and boys enjoyed reading. Her publisher asked her to write a story for girls. "What?" she thought. "I'd rather write about boys than girls. The only girls I ever really played with are my sisters." That gave her an idea. "My sisters, of course. I'll write about my family." And that is what she did. In her book, Anna became Meg, Beth kept the same name, Abba May became Amy, and Louisa became Joe. So she called the person in the book that she considered herself Joe, which could be a boy's name, right?
Yeah.
Although that is what I call my sister Joe because her name is Joanne. So sometimes I call her Joe. Her own dear mother became Marmee, and her father she simply called Father. In her book, she changed the Alcott's last name to March, so it was the March family. What would be the title of her new book? She decided upon Little Women. Little Women was a big success. All who read it realized that this book was about real people. The readers loved it and made Louisa May Alcott's dreams come true. With the money she earned from writing Little Women, she was able to pay all her family's bills and take good care of them. And by the way, that would be what the book looked like long ago. That would not be the cover of it now, but that would be what it looks like long ago. And that is a picture that somebody has from that book, evidently. An illustration from it. Next page. And there you see the home of Louisa May Alcott. Alright, so still, it must become a historic place. I don't know if you're allowed to go visit it there, but that would be the home. Just about anyone who loves to read will enjoy Little Women. Those who know some of the life of Louisa May Alcott will love the book even more, for they will realize that most of the book is true. It describes the feeling of being poor, the sorrow the March family felt at Beth's death, and the happy times the sisters shared with each other. Notice on the page before, it said that every sister she gave a new name to, except for Beth. Do you think maybe she called Beth Beth because Beth died? So she wanted to honor her by keeping her name the same? Later books. Being a tomboy herself, Miss Alcott wanted to write about boys too. As the years passed, she wrote Little Men. The last book she wrote before she died was Jo's Boys, which contains the story of little men and which continues the story of little men and tells about the March family in later years. Louisa May Alcott died in 1888, only 2 days after her father's death. She was buried in Concord, Massachusetts, near other famous authors of her time. Although many years have passed since the time Louisa May Alcott wrote Little Women, her books are still read by children as well as adults. All right, answer these questions. There is a word bank at the bottom if you need a little help. Louisa's family lived most of their lives in
Massachusetts.
Very good. They were blank girls in the Alcott family. Just call out four girls. Because her family was poor, Louisa wanted to someday earn enough money to pay all her family's bills. Her first story was published when she was only 16 years old. Good. Louisa's family was a stop on the
Underground Railroad.
Where slaves stopped for rest and food. During the Civil War, Louisa May Alcott worked as a nurse caring for soldiers in a Union hospital. The name of Louisa May Alcott's most famous book is Little Women. She wrote the book about her own family. Very good.